I've been saving them up. Those of you who've been sending in the email questions about the Alec Baldwin shooting. So we got them here. In case we don't answer them, I'll read them if there's any questions in here that we don't touch on. Because we got Eddie from NorCal Gun Vault joining us in studio. Hello, Eddie.
Good morning.
So as this story continued to develop yesterday, I realized we need to get the expert in the studio to try to help explain what happened, why it happened, how it happened, and whose fault it might be. Now, you brought over a bunch of demonstrative props that we were just looking at in my office.
Nice.
But let's go back to let's start there. Because a lot of when this story broke on Friday, I did my best to try to explain. A lot of people hear prop gun and they think, well, how can somebody die from a prop gun? Because it's like shooting Nerf darts. And so we try to explain, well, no, actually, on this set and on most sets, they're using actual guns. What are they using? Because they're not firing bullets. So what's happening when they use these guns?
So they'll use a mixture. I mean, depending upon the scene that they're doing, they may use a replica gun. They may use a solid polyurethane gun. They may use a real gun, and they're all property of the property department, which is where the term prop comes. So everything that rolls out is a prop. If it's not part of the scenery or one of the actors, it's a prop. So they'll use real guns, and they'll use typically blanks, but in some scenes when they're filming or setting up, they may use live ammunition because they're shooting into a safety zone, into a safe range, into something, so that you get the realism, because everybody wants realism. Nobody wants cap guns on TV. And so
when they're using blanks, is there a layman's way to explain to people what that is? Because a lot of people don't understand what that means.
Right, a blank is an actual the same parts of a bullet that in what we refer to as a bullet, but in a cartridge, which includes the casing, the primer, the powder, and the projectile, which is the bullet. That's what it's called. We refer to bullets and we think of the whole thing. Well, they're shooting the casing, powder, and primer, and then there's a wad in the tip of it to create the pressure, so you get that flash, you get that normal, but something still comes out of there, and at close range you could injure somebody, or in some case, one Hollywood, a guy was doing a scene where he put a gun to his head and it killed him with a blank.
It wasn't a bullet. It was a wad of.
It was a wad.
Wax usually, right? Yeah,
wax or paper or something, just something to create the pressure.
But it's traveling at the speed of sound, right? I mean,
right.
So now what we found out yesterday from the director is what we speculated on Friday. Alec Baldwin, they were rehearsing for a scene they were about to shoot, and they were trying to get the camera angle, and he had the gun, the prop gun, that he was given, that he was told was cold, which is supposed to mean it's safe, and he pointed it right at the camera because that's the angle they wanted, and when it discharged, it hit the two people behind the camera, the cinematographer who was killed and the director who was shot in the shoulder. Now, we were talking yesterday about the prop guy, and there's two different people. There's the armorer, and she, in this case, she's actually in charge of the weapons, and then there's the assistant director, who's the one that handed it to him, who said it was a cold gun, and I guess those two people are supposed to communicate? And, okay, so in the end, have we had it confirmed? Was she shot by a bullet?
Yeah, that's what everything I've read said it was a live round in the gun, which is what they're trying to figure out. How did that happen? I mean, I read some information from, and this is from a labor union that is involved with theater, but they have procedures in place where they do this demonstration. They'll fire into a test can or something, and they'll into a trap, and they'll make sure that everything is ready to go before the scene. But even then, when you're handed a firearm, the first thing you should do is verify it's either loaded or unloaded. And in that case, what am I shooting? What am I pointing at? And obviously that didn't get checked.
So you wrote a blog that you put up at NorCalGunVault.com that's very in-depth for people that want to read a little bit more. It's got some cool graphics if you want to learn about this. In the end, you would deem this a negligent discharge, correct?
Yes.
Which means there's some fault, there's some blame.
Absolutely.
Now, we weren't there. We're going entirely on what we're told. When you talk about, and one of the things I was speculating on Friday is people that aren't around guns, people that hate guns, people that don't know guns, they don't even understand exactly what you said. Every one of us that is taught properly about guns knows that when you pick up a gun, the very first thing you do is you confirm whether it is or isn't loaded. Even if you literally just saw, if I watched you, Eddie, discharge the cartridge from the magazine, whatever you want to call it, from my 9mm, and hand me the gun, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure there isn't one in the chamber, and I'm going to look to make sure there's not a cartridge in it. A lot of people have never been around guns. don't even understand that. So from what we know, who's negligent? Is it the guy, the assistant director who had the gun, who clearly didn't check it? He told Alec Baldwin it was cold. Is Alec Baldwin negligent?
Yes.
Both.
Everybody in that chain was negligent, but it ultimately relied on Alec Baldwin, who was the one holding it and using it to determine that it was unloaded and safe for use. And we go over all of this type of stuff also at our basic firearm ownership class, which we have one tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. We still have 5 seats open if you want to get in. We go over all of this stuff with it, not blanks, but so.
But everything about the safety.
Everything about this particular incident, you'll learn what by the time you walk out of it, you'll know exactly what they did wrong.
Yeah, see, this has been my disconnect, because I'm like, these people get paid. This is a job. And I think of, which I've told the story before, of my niece and nephew in Arizona that, grew up with guns from the time they were tiny. And they trust their father. They know their father is very responsible with guns. However, every time, I've watched this year after year, that we go out to the desert shooting, they are picking every gun those kids pick up, they're checking. They don't, no one, if somebody said, "Oh, Dad," they don't care. Right. It's automatic. It's automatic. It's what they do. They check every one. And so I'm like, well, maybe I'm not understanding completely what's happening on this movie set, but I'm sitting there going, they're getting paid. Right. Like, you would think just, oh, this is part of my job, right? Like, right, exactly. It's not, it might not be instinctual because you haven't been around guns for a long time, but hey, on the list of your to-dos for your job that you're getting paid for, this is one of them. Who cares that Sally checked it and Joe checked it and Bob checked it? The recent person holding the gun always checks it. So I have a disconnect.
So because everything has to be political, we've started to draw these lines.
Right.
The conservatives are out for Alec Baldwin's head, right, and saying that he's ultimately negligent and he's a liberal gun hater and everything that we hate, and so we're gonna go after Alec Baldwin. A guy named Serge Svetnoy, who was the head electrician on the movie Rust, which is what they were filming, that's been stopped now, penned an emotional piece on social media yesterday in which he claimed that Miss Hutchins died as a result of negligence and unprofessionalism, and wrote, because we were wondering, this guy Dave Halls, the assistant director that handed Alec Baldwin the gun, he has a history of safety complaints against him. Mr. Svetnoy, the electrician, says, quote, "To save a dime sometimes you hire people who are not fully qualified for the complicated and dangerous job, and you risk the lives of the other people who are close and your lives as well. I understand that you always fight for the budget, but you cannot allow this to happen." He goes on and on and on. He basically says it was Halls and the armory girl who are at fault, who shouldn't have been on the set. They're not experienced enough. They're not professional enough. Reed Russell is a camera operator who was working on the film set that day, and he noted to detectives in a newly released affidavit that Alec Baldwin was very careful when it came to the use of prop firearms while filming prior to the tragic accident. He tells stories about, at one point, making sure that there was a kid who was around the set, and he had the kid cleared off. This isn't during a different... So what's happening here is the wagons are circling for Alec Baldwin, sure, because he's getting grief from the conservatives, and then the liberals are calling on all of this to just ban guns on Hollywood sets.
Right.
There's a petition calling for a ban on the use of real firearms on film and TV sets that has gained more than 25,000 signatures, calling on Alec Baldwin to specifically use his power and influence in the Hollywood film industry. A state senator in California has introduced a bill to ban live ammunition and guns that can fire such ammunition from theatrical productions across the state. We did wonder, though, on Friday we were talking about this, in 2021, I mean, we're gun people, but in 2021, don't they have something else they could use that wouldn't be so dangerous?
Well, they've got CGI. I mean, but it's really hard to get the realism from the action of the firearm. They would have to develop something like a blowback type pellet pistol or something that was shown to be inert and yet could give them some kind of reaction that gave them a normal snap. I mean, you look at John Wick. There's no way they could make John Wick with replica guns. It just wouldn't happen. There's too much realism in it.
I didn't know it got political because I don't pay attention to that stuff. I hate that it has, because this is a great lesson for everyone. I'm not trying to put Alec Baldwin at blame. I'm just saying that who's ever picking up the gun checks it. It doesn't matter who had it in their hands before. And I think that that's just a really good message to get out there. And now it's going to get lost because we got to, get on our teams and fight over stuff that has nothing to do with anything.
Well, and what gets lost in this is two things. First of all, the reason it's a story is it never happens, right? The last famous one was Brandon Lee, which was 1993 or whatever. And the other thing gets lost is the solution. I think that, Eddie, your suggestion is just be smart. Be trained and follow all the protocols. Right. We got this email from Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Says, how did the one pull of the trigger kill the camera person, cinematographer, and wound the director? Did it pass through her, or were there multiple pulls of the trigger?
My understanding was that it actually passed through her, and again, I want to make sure everybody understands too. This is a horrible tragedy. We're talking about this objectively from the point of firearm safety, but this is a horrible tragedy, and I don't take it anything other than that. And this could have been avoided, but it passed through her, hit the director in the shoulder. She said because she didn't die immediately. They took her to the hospital and she passed. And she had said that she couldn't feel her legs, which told me it's similar to a situation that happened to a friend of mine's daughter, where the bullet actually bounced off her vertebrae and it causes a bruise in the spinal cord, and she lost feeling from her chest down for about a day and a half. So it seems to me like this passed through her and hit the director with just one shot. And
we're doing all of this, again, based entirely on what we're being told by both the media and these affidavits that the sheriff is releasing, because I know the initial report was that after the sound, she grabbed her stomach.
Right.
And which to me made me think, is that where the bullet went? But, who knows? It could have been a little, and where's he? But at this time, there is no claim that there was a second live round.
Right.
It was one bullet that passed through and somehow got him as well. Lauren says, is it possible that the gun was actually cold and checked, but at the last minute, the assistant director or whoever handed it to Alec changed out the bullet on purpose, knowing that Alec would fire the gun towards the director? Yeah, we got to get some good conspiracy theories here too, right?
I read one that goes way back. It's like Hunt for Red October, and he was in that. And I guess this gal is from the same place that the Russian sub was from. And I mean, it was this really woundy tale. I thought, man, somebody worked really hard on that one.
Boy, that is quite the stretch. So the assistant director hated the cinematographer so much or the director, that he wanted Alec Baldwin to kill one or both of them. So he put a live round in it, but told Alec Baldwin that the gun was cold.
Or he hated Alec Baldwin.
Or he wanted to get Alec Baldwin in trouble.
Yeah, I'm kind of sitting in the same area as Dawn on this one, where I don't get why it has to become a political thing when there's a really great lesson that could be learned here. You could continue to use guns that allow you to have realism in movies, while also kind of teaching the lesson that something is only dangerous in the hands of someone with malintent or someone who is negligent. So that could be the conversation, rather than, let's just get these things everywhere away from here. Because I feel like that is, people can be irresponsible and negligent and then dangerous and risk people's lives with a pencil if they're being ridiculous enough, right? They should be able to use the prop. If it's going to make the movie better, sure. But with A comes B. And I think that people don't make that connection, and that's what's really missing here, is that it should be a story of checking the gun.
Well, is there anything in place like that on movie sets where the actors using the props have to go through a gun safety course?
Yes,
there is.
That's the job. Okay. That's the job of the weapons master or armor.
They hold a class. Don't they do a meeting every day?
Yeah. They should do a meeting every day. And they should verify the firearms on set that day are in a safe condition or in the condition they need to be in, and that they're properly placed and marked.
And that was one of the things we heard about this Dave Hall's guy on the 2019 set of a Hulu show that I'm forgetting now, was that he either didn't hold those meetings, or when he did, he was very haphazard and he would complain about having to do them. And so he may or may not have been not paying attention. But in the end, is there criminal negligence here somewhere, in your opinion, from what we've heard?
That's hard to say. I mean, it seems to me like, again, there's fault in this, definitely, and there is people to blame, and there needs to be accountability on that, whether it was criminal or just straight negligence, which can be prosecuted.
If you go to the hardcore, the hardcore argument would be that Alec Baldwin is criminally negligent for not checking the gun. Now, he's going to say that's literally why we have these guys,
right?
Why we have this director and why we have this armorer and everybody else. I don't know if that stands up, but that's what I would assume would be the argument.
It all comes down to safety, though. I mean, you look at the basic safety rules. Rule number 1: never point at anything you don't intend to shoot. Now, in this case here, they were pointing at a camera. Why didn't they have ballistic shields up there? Why didn't they have something? Why weren't they wearing? They could wear Kevlar vests or whatever. There are measures they can take to mitigate something like this. Rule number 2: assume every firearm is loaded. And my rule 3 is, even if you think it's all done, check it again. Rule 4, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. I mean, all the basics are there. They're taught every single time. And if they follow these, then you're less likely to have an incident. But I think this was caused for complacency.
Sloppy. They got lazy, sloppy.
Exactly.
I think they were halfway through the filming. They're probably using guns every single day, and they just got overly comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think the other thing too, what it sounds like, even though the actors and actresses will take gun safety courses, it sounds like they do rely on these other folks. That's their job. Once they hand me the gun, there's nothing I need to do. And if that's how it's been, then the push would be, nope, you still check it. Right? Like that's what's... See, to me, it just tells me an environment that truly doesn't understand gun safety. Right? If you're going to leave it up to those... And I know you were doing a scenario, Rob, that might be said, but I could see... This is how I... Honestly, it's kind of how, when you start talking about it yesterday, I'm thinking... Oh, there go those guys' jobs. This is what they're supposed to do. People are just handed guns all the time, trusting these other folks because, well, that's what they get paid for. And if you're not if you're not around guns, which is okay, you know what I mean? If you didn't grow up around them or know about them or learn about them later in life, you think that that's perfectly fine and okay. To just, okay, I'm going to trust you and I'm just going to go ahead and take this gun.
And I think that's where the complacency runs downhill argument makes the most sense to me because, as I said a few minutes ago, they're touching these various prop guns over and over and over and over again, day after day after day after day after day. And after a while, you start to go, okay, I don't need to check it. Okay, I mean, my God, this is the 17th gun that I've held today, and it's the 17th day in a row and the 17th week of the shooting, and maybe 2 of them got complacent at the same time, and that's where this particular negligence happened.
Well, and I've spent a long time in theater, and that one of the first things you learn is to check your props and be responsible for your props. The prop master will come and bring everything out on the table or wherever they're keeping things for you to run over and grab, but you have to make sure if there's a ring box in a proposal scene, you are responsible before the show and before your scene to open that ring box, make sure the ring's in there. Great, ready for my scene. That applies to everything, and I'm surprised that either that spirit has gone out where you don't have to, that theater type spirit is not there where you do have to be responsible for anything your character touches or you use in the show, but that may need to make a comeback, especially when there are things that have projectiles in them or could.
It sounds like one of those things when you start out in a certain career and there's things you do and then as you move up you don't do them anymore. It sounds like that now. It sounds like, I did that in high school theater and college theater, and now that I'm big time I have people and if we go to cut the scene and the ring's not there, we yell at the person, right? Because it's their job now. I'm too big now to do this stuff,
right? And it's very easy because there's a dead woman. There's very easy for us to get contemptible about it. It's human nature. Brandon and I fall into this trap. I realize it's not life or death. We fall into this trap now and then where we're supposed to check something and we forget to. It's like a daily thing. Check it every day, and we just I'm sure Brandon did it.
Right.
I'm sure Rob did it. And then oops, the delay's not working and the F word goes out over the radio. Sorry. A lot of people are writing in. Let me check the delay. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Oh my God.
I think a lot of people are joining late, but there's a lot of people who are writing in and they're asking, I know you covered this earlier, why would you have live ammo on a set? If this is an actual bullet, why is it anywhere near a movie set? And I think the director even did make some comment that is fueling this. Like even he was wondering why there was live ammo, but you said that this is not uncommon.
No, I mean, my understanding of it from the research I was doing is that live ammo is at times used on set, whether it should be, if it's not used in the scene, should it be on the cart? That's for them to decide, but that they have used live ammunition to when they're shooting a scene that needs that realism, and then they'll do everything else they need to do. I mean, with CGI and movie magic nowadays, they can make the flash, they can make the sound, everything else, but they want realism, and that's what we demand as viewers.
Yes,
realism.
Right? Yeah, you'd know.
Laura says, "Hey Eddie, how would someone know a blank from a real bullet?"
Well, you'll look at it, and the blank typically has a crimped edge, or it doesn't have a bullet. It'll have like a little. You'll look at it. It looks like somebody filled in the casing with wax. So there's no copper or lead projectile coming out of the tip of the casing. It's usually crimped or filled.
There is also a story out there, and it's true. It's just they're trying to track down what exactly it is. Hours before this happened, the camera crew, I think it was 7 camera crew members, walked off of the film. Rust over safety concerns.
Right.
Now, whether or not that's related to David Halls or not, I don't think they put that together. The assistant director.
But this could have all been this could have been something that because of that, certain people on the set were frustrated because these people walked and then they were trying to make up for it, and in doing so got complacent, got sloppy, and this occurred.
This could just be a big mess.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how realistic this is, but you have 7 people, seven cameramen who have walked off. I'm like, I want to figure out what's going on here before we start filming anything today. Like,
Yeah, but
what are these? I know
You got a deadline.
Money,
you got
money.
millions of dollars.
But, I mean, and look
pressure.
God, but
Some of these camera people are already on social media talking about the safety issue, but the first thing they mentioned was they weren't getting paid, their hotel rooms were taken away, blah, 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 safety. So it was a larger picture
okay.
it was a larger picture than just safety, but that was one of the elements that drove them on.
And these are the cameramen. This isn't like the craft service people. Like they have eyes on everything the whole time. So clearly they were seeing something happening that caused them to do that.
The LA Times is reporting this morning that one crew member said that there were no safety meetings after the incident occurred, or an assurance that the same episode would not happen again. This was from why they walked out, not from the shooting. And so that would also tie in with what we heard about Dave Halls on that other Hulu show, where he just doesn't do the safety meetings.
Right.
So this sounds like pretty haphazard and all avoidable, as you said.
Exactly.
All human error, very rare, and it's the biggest story out there because guns and everything has to be political. Right. When is your safety training class again?
We have one tomorrow night at 6 to 8, and then another one on November 30th if you can't get into that class from 6 to 8. And it's all on the website. You go into the training link, you'll click on basic firearm ownership, and you can click through the calendar the next 2-3 months.
And when they go to NorCalGunVault.com, how can they find this blog that you have written, which is really in depth and insightful over the Alec Baldwin thing?
In the very top, it's in little tiny letters, but it says blog. In the very top is blog. You click on that, and it'll be the top story right now because I just posted it.
Outstanding.
Nice.
Thank you so much for being here and helping us
Thanks
clear
for
this up.
having
Eddie from NorCal Gun Vault. They're online at NorCalGunVault.com.